Hello everyone, welcome to another Helldivers 2 video. So for today's video, I'm going to be going over 10 of the best primary weapons that you can bring against the Illuminate. Now a couple of disclaimers before we get started. One, this is my personal list based on around 60 plus hours of testing against the Illuminate. And two, there are over 30 primary weapons in the game now, and they couldn't all make the top 10. So if your favorite weapon didn't make the list, odds are it probably just missed the cut, because there were a few good ones that I really wanted to include that just didn't quite make it. And it doesn't mean a weapon is bad if you don't see it on this list. It all kind of comes down to personal preference and your own individual playstyle. I also want to point out that a lot of the weapons on this list are good on their own with any armor set, but I did do a lot of my testing with the new armor set that has the Siege Ready, and that gives you a 30% increased reload speed and a 20% extra ammo capacity, which makes some weapons perform way better than they normally do, which works really well when you're facing up against the Illuminate. So starting off my list is the Breaker Incendiary Shotgun. Now this weapon has always been one of the go-tos against the Terminids, and at one point I think it ended up being one of the most used weapons in all of Helldivers 2, which sadly resulted in it getting a nerf a few months back. They ended up reducing its overall ammo capacity, and now that makes managing ammo a bit of a pain when using this weapon. Now this weapon has 240 base damage, and it only does light armor penetrating, but since it catches everything on fire, that's where the real damage comes from, and that fire damage is going to help really well at getting around a lot of those heavily armored enemies. And if you use the Breaker Incendiary with the new Siege Ready armor, this will increase your overall magazine up to 5 and will make your reloads even faster. This results in you getting a ton of kills when going up against the Illuminate. With there being just tons of voteless, usually gathering up in large groups, the Breaker Incendiary will make quick work of large crowds. Any match where I use the Breaker Incendiary, I would end the match with close to 1,000 kills without even trying very hard. Another great thing about the Breaker Incendiary is that since it shoots out so many pellets when you go up against overseers or those annoying elevated overseers with the jetpacks, you can just fire off a couple of shots in their general direction and it will catch them on fire. So even if you aren't very accurate, you can still kill those elevated overseers with just fire damage over time, which is pretty nice. Same goes for those annoying watcher enemies that call in reinforcements. Just paint them with a couple of shots and watch them burn. Just remember to be patient with this weapon though. Don't go blasting everything with as many shots until they die. When you're using the Breaker Incendiary, you just want to hit the enemies with enough shots to catch them on fire. Then you want to let the fire do all the heavy lifting. So anytime you see a large crowd or a couple of overseers, just paint them with a couple of shots and then let them burn. So overall, I think the Breaker Incendiary is one of the best horde killers in the game. It does a great job of racking up the kill streaks against the voteless, and since it does a great job of helping out with those flying enemies as well, I can't recommend this weapon enough, especially if you're using the new Siege Ready armor set. So the next weapon on the list is the Tenderizer. It does 95 damage, it has 35 capacity, it comes with 2 different rates of fire, and multiple firing modes. Now unfortunately it only has light armor penetrating, and I didn't pick too many weapons that have light armor penetrating on this list because the Overseers are one of the biggest threats, and they all have medium armor, so you need some sort of medium armor penetration to kill those types of enemies. Now you can kill Overseers using light armor penetration, you just have to use more shots and you have to shoot them in between their armor plating. It can be done, you just can't go like aiming for headshots or anything. But the reason I'm putting the Tenderizer on this list is because I feel it does a really great job at taking out the voteless and taking out those annoying watchers that call for reinforcements. The Tenderizer can be very accurate, and with it having multiple firing modes, you can just absolutely burn through your ammo very quickly while taking out the voteless. Now what I found that worked best for me when using the Tenderizer is that I actually used it in first person mode because it handles better when you're in first person versus third person. So anytime there was a huge horde of voteless and they were all charging me at once, I would switch to first person, aim down sights, and then I would switch it to either burst fire or single fire, and then I would individually pop each of the heads of the voteless, which ended up being way better than if I just blindly fired into the crowd of them. So if you're going to use the Tenderizer, I highly recommend that you try switching to first-person mode. That way your shots are more accurate, and then you change the rate of fire. That way you don't end up burning through all of your ammo. And then, like I said, it can kill the Overseers. It's just going to take you a couple more shots, and then obviously it's not going to do anything against like the Harvester, for example, because it's all heavy armor and you're just not going to get through it. But if you want a fun, reliable weapon to use against the hordes of the voteless, I highly recommend the Tenderizer. So up next on the list is another assault rifle, and this is the Adjudicator. Now, the Adjudicator does 90 damage, so it's 5 less than the Tenderizer. It has a capacity of 30, which is 5 less than the Tenderizer, but it has medium armor penetration. Now, the recoil can be a bit much when using the Adjudicator, and because of that, I was kind of struggling when going up against the hordes of the voteless. So I did the same thing that I did with the Tenderizer. I switched it to first person, and I switched it to single fire mode, and then I started just racking up the kills. This weapon is amazing if you're firing it in first-person mode. You can just pop headshot after headshot of the voteless coming down the street because they're all going to be lined up at the same exact height, so you can very easily just wipe through an entire horde with this thing. And since the Adjudicator has medium armor penetration, you can very quickly score a couple headshots on both the Overseers and the elevated Overseers and just very quickly pop their heads. So in some ways, the Adjudicator is even better than the Tenderizer in the fact that it can quickly kill those Overseers, which can be the difference of life and death. I can't really emphasize enough just how important it is to take out those Overseers, especially if they call in reinforcements and they send in like 5 or 6 of those jetpack Overseers. They can be such a pain in the butt, especially when all the voteless are chasing you at the same time. And being able to reliably take out those jetpack guys with just a couple of headshots with the Adjudicator is really nice. So the Adjudicator is definitely better at killing the Overseers, but I do think that the Tenderizer still has just a wee bit of an advantage when facing up against the voteless, because the Tenderizer has those 5 extra shots you can get off, but the Adjudicator is still very good against the voteless, don't get me wrong. It's going to feel like you're going to be reloading more often and burning through your reserve ammo a little bit more frequently because of those 5 less shots that you get. But overall, I had a ton of fun using the Adjudicator. Having that medium armor penetration made a big difference, and like I said, if you aim this thing in first person and you switch to the single fire mode, it basically just changed the entire feel of this weapon, and it does a great job at wiping out the Illuminate. The next weapon is pretty short and sweet. It's the FLA M66 Torture, and this does 375 damage per second, and obviously catches things on fire because, you know, this is the primary flamethrower. And obviously this is going to do very well at taking out large crowds of the voteless because, you know, catching an entire horde on fire is going to spread like crazy, and yeah, like you can rack in some pretty big kill streaks using the Torture. It's also pretty good at taking out the Overseers as well, even those annoying flying ones. As long as they're semi-close to you at about medium range, you can pretty reliably catch them on fire. Just hold down the trigger for a couple seconds on each of the Overseers, and they'll end up dying pretty quick. And I don't really have too many complaints for the Torture other than the fact that it does have to be close to medium range to be able to use it, so you are going to struggle a little bit at anything at a distance, but the Torture is going to do an absolute great job at taking out any of those enemies at close to medium range. And then technically you can kill those giant harvesters with the Torture as well, although it's not recommended because it is going to take up a lot of your ammo to do so, and it's going to be a lot more effective anyway if you just use some sort of stratagem to take out those harvesters. But for everything else, I think that the Torture is a pretty good option. The next weapon on my list is the Arc 12 Blitzer. Now, the Arc 12 Blitzer does 250 base damage and has medium armor penetration, but the real highlight of the Arc 12 Blitzer is that it has unlimited ammo, and with there being just tons and tons of voteless, having unlimited ammo is a huge plus. Another cool feature with the Arc 12 Blitzer is that it has a bit of a mini stun lock, and the more you keep shooting an enemy with this weapon, the more they will get stunned. So one, this is really great at shutting down the hordes of the voteless because you can just stun lock them in place, then either hit them with a follow-up grenade or honestly just keep spamming them with shots. And then it's also really good at taking out the Overseers because they can't really fight back if they're stunned in place. And this does a great job at stun locking those jetpack Overseers because normally if you try to get up close to them, they'll freak out and try to fly away so they can keep their distance. And well, the Arc 12 Blitzer will just kind of stop them in their tracks. So if there's a jetpack Overseer trying to make a quick escape, just keep spamming them with the Arc 12 Blitzer, and it will stun lock them until they basically just die. So there's been a number of different times where I've had like 3 or 4 overseers close to each other, and I could just stun lock them all, and just having unlimited ammo and not having to go look for resupplies every couple minutes is really great. When you're facing up against so many voteless, I found that that's a pretty big issue with a lot of the weapons in this game, is that you just run out of ammo so fast. So I feel like I'm always either calling in a resupply or I'm running around trying to look for ammo crates just scattered throughout the area. And with the Arc 12 Blitzer, you don't have to worry about ammo management whatsoever. So you're free to choose whatever armor set you want. You don't have to use the new armor passive. And I don't really have any complaints with the Arc 12 Blitzer other than it needs to be close to semi-medium range. When you get to that medium to far range, though, it obviously cannot hit any of those enemies. So it has unlimited ammo, it stun locks, and it's great at dealing with any enemy type so far except for the harvesters. Then the next weapon on the list is the Plas 101 Purifier. Now this weapon can do up to 500 damage per hit, and it has medium armor penetration, and you can basically choose to either charge up the shot all the way, or you can choose to rapid fire multiple shots off if, in case an enemy gets up close into your face. Now, I really love the Plasma 101 Purifier against the Illuminate. It does a great job at taking out the hordes of enemies. You can just charge up a shot and shoot it at the ground, and the splash damage will take out multiple voteless at the same time, which is nice. And my personal favorite feature is that if you charge up the shots all the way, it only takes 2 shots to kill any Overseer. This weapon just burns through the Overseers like it's nothing. And only 2 charged shots to kill an Overseer is a pretty big deal. And they don't even have to be headshots. You can hit them anywhere in their body. So if you see 3 or 4 of those elevated jetpack Overseers, normally that's pretty much a death sentence if you're just completely overwhelmed and there's like 3 or 4 of them spamming you with grenades and stuff. But with the Plasma 101 Purifier, you can very quickly change the tide of battle and just quickly take them out like they're nothing. So I highly recommend the Plasma 101 Purifier. Now, I'm not ranking this list in any particular order, but if I had to say that one outshines all the others, I think the Plasma 101 Purifier is probably one of the best weapons overall in the game against the Illuminate. Then next up is a similar weapon, which is the Plas 1 Scorcher. Now the Scorcher received some love a couple updates ago where they gave it an increase to its ammo capacity by 5, so now it does 200 damage, has medium armor penetration, and has 20 shots before you have to reload. And I have to say the Plasma 1 Scorcher also does a great job at just burning through the Overseers. I mean, it'll make quick work of them. It doesn't kill them as quickly as the Plasma 101 Purifier, but it's still kills them pretty quickly. Plus, with it having a high rate of fire and it doing a bit of splash damage, it does do a pretty decent job at killing the voteless as well. And I don't really have too much to say about the Scorcher other than the fact that if you want something that's similar to the Purifier that has a higher rate of fire and is pretty fun to use, I recommend the Scorcher as well. I know some people don't like the fact that you have to charge up each shot for the Plasma 101 Purifier, so if you're one of those people that don't like to charge up your shots and you want something similar to the Purifier, definitely go with the Scorcher. So the next weapon on the list is the Counter Sniper. Now it has 200 damage per shot with medium armor penetrating, and it holds 15 shots. So this weapon is going to do very well at headshotting the Overseers. It will take them out in just a couple of shots, and since it only holds 15 shots, it is going to struggle a little bit against those voteless that are getting up in your face. And normally I wouldn't include this on the list because there's just so many of the voteless that's the majority of the enemies that you have to deal with, and since it does kind of struggle in that regard, it does hurt this weapon a little bit, but because it does such a great job at taking out the Overseers, I feel like this weapon is still a must-have sometimes. And I found that using the Counter Sniper to quickly take out those Overseers and then switching to a support weapon like a Stalwart, for example, for the voteless, just is a very mean combo. And just being able to snipe Overseers at a distance before I go into a new area has really helped with some of those objectives where I have to clear out a bunch of those ships or capture the flag, for example. If I can pick off those Overseers before they even realize I'm there, is just a huge help to the team and really makes some of those dives a lot easier. The next weapon on the list is the SMG-32 Reprimand from the previous Warbond. Now it does 125 damage with medium armor penetration and has a 25 capacity. And I found that if you use the Reprimand in a similar way to how I use the Adjudicator and the Tenderizer, and you use it in first person and try to slowly burst fire the heads of all of the voteless, you can make quick work of an entire horde of voteless pretty easily. Now, the Reprimand hits really hard for it being an SMG, and it has a crazy rate of fire, so that's why you kind of want to take your time and single fire this thing, especially when going up against the Overseers. If you see an Overseer, you can just very quickly pop them with a couple of shots to the head, and they will die fairly quickly, versus if you're in full auto and you're just spraying, a lot of your shots are just going to hit their armor. It's not going to do very much damage, so you definitely want to take your time, put it in single fire mode, and try to go for headshots with Overseers, and you'll make quick work of them. And the fact that this weapon is an SMG is kind of crazy to me. I mean, it acts like an assault rifle. I mean, it's on par right beside the Adjudicator and the Tenderizer. So, you know, it kind of just comes down to your personal play style and just the feel of the weapon. And to me, I mean, I really like the Reprimand, especially against like the automatons and stuff. I think it's a very slept on weapon in the community, and I think it really shines here against the Illuminate. And I personally was having a ton of success using the SMG-32 Reprimand, and I think you guys are going to as well. And then the final weapon on today's list is the crossbow. Now, I had to include the crossbow because it's currently like the best primary in the game against every faction. I don't know what went on at Arrowhead. I mean, the crossbow launched and it was awful, and then it has received a number of different buffs and they just keep buffing it. I mean, it's one-handed, so it could be used with shields, and the loadout I was using with the crossbow was just working wonders. I was using the new armor set, I was using the directional shield and the crossbow, so I was blocking all of the shots from the Illuminate with the new shield, which is great. And then it only takes 2 shots with the crossbow to kill the Overseers, and you could just shoot at the ground and do a ton of damage to any of the voteless. I mean, with 620 damage per shot, that is a lot of damage, and being able to reload the crossbow quickly and having more ammo for the crossbow is just amazing. So right now, I think the crossbow is just god tier, and you can't really go wrong when using the crossbow with any of the factions in the game. It's just that good. So I definitely had to include the crossbow on this list because using the crossbow honestly makes the game feel like you're on easy mode sometimes. So that is going to do it for my top 10 personal favorite primary weapons for facing the Illuminate. Like I said, there's a couple weapons that just barely didn't make the list, like the Cookout, for example. I think the Cookout's very good. And the Sickle, I know a lot of people love the Sickle in the community. It's just the Sickle doesn't do enough damage to those Overseers for me to really include it on the list, but the Sickle is really good at taking out those hordes of the voteless. So let me know down in the comment section down below what your favorite go-to weapon is for the Illuminate. If you have any cool loadout ideas, put those down in the comment section as well, because I'm going to be making an Illuminate loadout video here within the next couple of days, so I'm interested to see what your guys' favorite loadouts are. If you're new here, hit the subscribe button and hit the bell for notifications, that way you don't miss out on any future videos. And if you guys made it this far and enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up because it helps me out in the algorithm. And that is going to do it for me, guys, and I will talk to you all next time.